the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
We'll go to Sandra now in Naperville, Illinois. Hi, Sandra.
Hello. It's not really a question. I just more wanted to kind of raise a little bit of awareness in the event that parents don't know that this is going on, because my kids just happen to be old enough where they can share this information with me. But my 17-year-old daughter and 14-year-old daughter told me that at their child's pediatrician wellness visit, when the doctor was with them in the room, she asked them what gender they feel most comfortable with, what pronouns they use, and according to my girls, very much several times repeated, "We won't tell your parents. Your parents won't know." And this combined with the legislation that is, I think it's been passed, the collaboration between the medical community, the school, and DCFS to assess the mental health of children in school using screeners that also can apparently read their body language to develop, intervention plans for kids they deem to be in crisis. I just feel this is all very dangerous, and parents really need to maybe ask to be present during. I pulled my kids out of that office this morning. I called and told them I didn't appreciate the doctor grooming my children, and I pulled all three out. And I'm now going to start looking for a pediatrician that doesn't participate in what they explained to me as the standards of Academy of Pediatrics. They told me I might be hard-pressed to find an office that doesn't do this, since it's part of the guidance, but I will find one.
Good for you. And, you're doing exactly the right thing. What was their reaction when you told them off on this? Was it by email or in person, or how did you do that?
I called the office. They said they understood. Perhaps the lady who answered the phone understands. She may not even agree with it. She did tell me that it's probably based on guidance from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and that, but she didn't get upset at me for saying these things. She just said she understood it.
And, it's obviously not her fault. She's just an employee there. So I'm sure she might even really agree with you. Sandra, I want to share with you an article that came out. I published for about 15 years, I published a magazine called Envoy, ENVOY, part of the Envoy Institute. And the lady who wrote this was from probably late 90s, early 2000s. Her name is Christine Franklin. And she, much to my shock and surprise and sorrow, I found out that she passed away, I believe, about a little over a year ago. And so that's beside the point, but she's no longer with us, so say a prayer for her soul. But she wrote an article that I'd like to share with you right now, and we'll get a link to it so you can share it with your friends if you're interested. But it speaks to something very similar about what you experienced. So when we say goodbye, I'll read that article, and then if you want to get it, you can get it on the show Facebook page or on the show Twitter feed at P. Madrid Show. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for the call. And here's the article that the late Christine Franklin wrote on this very kind of topic. So the title of the article is "A Routine Doctor's Visit Reveals More Than Expected." I know I'm raising my kids in a culture that is anti-morality and anti-Catholic. The blatant garbage is easy to explain. Blasphemous art exhibits, scandalous motion pictures, maniacal now protesters at a pro-life church. Those I'm prepared for, and so are my kids. We talk about it at the table or at a bedtime or just after we've read something in the paper. Now, she wrote this, keep in mind, about 20 some odd years ago. Let's just say 23 years ago. Things have changed. They've gotten worse, if you ask me, just like the caller who just called in. So here's what Christine said in the article. "It's the subtle stuff that often knocks me for a parental loop, like when my good, conscientious Christian family doctor offered birth control pills to my 12-year-old daughter. I'm not making this up. Jody, her daughter, said I should write about it so other parents would be prepared. We were definitely unprepared. It was time for Jody's 7th grade checkup. So I made an appointment with my own doctor. We'll call Dr. X. Dr. X is a Christian, someone I trusted to be sensitive with a 12-year-old. I told Jody that everything would be fine, even if it felt a little embarrassing. I explained about my own yearly physical and that hers wouldn't be nearly that extensive. It was just a school physical, but because of her age, the growing up topics would probably come up. And indeed they did. I went with Jody into the examination room. Dr. X was friendly and kind. When Dr. X asked Jody if she had any questions about puberty, she smiled and said, "My mom has already told me everything I need to know." "That's wonderful," said the doctor, and then proceeded to check Jody's heart, lungs, ears, and throat. Then, when Dr. X asked me to leave the room for a moment, I didn't think twice. I winked at Jody and left, honoring her privacy and modesty. Not 5 minutes later, the doctor called me back in. One look at Jody, and I knew she was distressed. My motherly alarm system kicked in, and I felt my heart speed up. Dr. X left the room, and I said to Jody, "What's wrong?" "The doctor asked me about birth control," said Jody. "I don't even know what that is." Stunned is an inadequate description. I felt my face turning red with rage. Dr. X returned, and I literally bit the inside of my cheek to keep from spewing forth loud invective. I knew I needed the whole story before I did or said anything. So when Jody and I got in the car, she told me everything. Here's the gist. When they were alone, the doctor asked Jody, she's again the 12-year-old daughter, if she was drinking or using drugs. Jody said no, and the doctor then told Jody in a firm way how important it was to keep drug and alcohol free. Then the doctor asked Jody if she had a boyfriend. Jody said no. Then the doctor said, "If you ever get a boyfriend and you're having sexual relations, I can give you birth control pills." So Chris says, "In the calmest voice I could muster, I told Jody the doctor was totally out of line to say that to you. It was wrong, it was inappropriate, it embarrassed you, and I'm so sorry I left you alone." I then explained very briefly what birth control means, to which Jody replied, "How stupid." I prayed and fumed. When we got home, I phoned the doctor. In a calm, divinely assisted tone of voice, I asked for the other side of the story. It squared exactly with what Jody had reported. Then I told Dr. X in no uncertain terms that both Jody and I were offended and that what had been said to my daughter violated the physician's oath to do no harm. Dr. X apologized for offending, but told me that it was a routine conversation for girls Jody's age. It's part of a community-wide effort to cut down on teen pregnancy. I told Dr. X, she said, that offering to prescribe dangerous hormonal drugs to a pre-adolescent child behind her parents' back was a horrific practice, and that the message on premarital sex should be as firm as the message against drugs and alcohol. You passed up a perfect opportunity to help a child remain committed to chastity. And the doctor didn't say much. So she concludes by saying, "I don't know if the conversation did any good. That doctor is a product of our culture, and I'm just one of these ultra-brainwashed Catholic mothers who naively assumes that her children can and will abstain from sex before marriage. I can only hope that some of my words sunk in. Jody wanted me to write this down so all Catholic parents would know to be careful. Even a good doctor with good intentions can point your child toward the path of destruction. Consider yourself forewarned." I think that speaks for itself. And parents, especially if you have the younger kids who are going in, the kinds of questions they may be asked may extend into other areas. Are there any guns in the home? Do your mom and dad go to church? I mean, I'm beginning to hear rumblings about things like that, just anecdotally from people that I've talked to. It's important that you have your wits about you. You can join me by listening to The Patrick Madrid Show on the Relevant Radio app, live each weekday at 8 to 11 a.m. And thanks for listening.